Hello, this is Mark Tucker, and welcome to the video Minimal Bluesky Feed Generator using TypeScript. To help us with this video, we're going to use this GitHub repository, which shows the most basic bare bones feed generator service that you can have to go ahead and then connect that to Bluesky to see the feed that's being generated. So let's go ahead and jump in. If you haven't downloaded it yet, there is instructions for go ahead and cloning the repo. There is a um, environment variable that's needed, so we're going to make sure that we copy over this example into a .env file. Right now, this feed host name is not correct. That's not where the feed's actually going to be hosted at. It needs to be hosted someplace that's publicly accessible so that Bluesky can get at it. What we're going to do in this example today, though, is we're going to go ahead and run this locally, and then we're going to expose it so that Bluesky can access it via a tool called ngrok. So already have ngrok downloaded. If you haven't done that, go ahead and do that. Sign up for a free account for that as well, and we should be good and ready to get going. So let's jump into the code here. Not a lot of code in this generator. If you're familiar with Express.js as a web server, then you're already that much farther ahead. But very simple, Express.js just allows you to create a web server and expose different endpoints. So here you can make just a regular GET request to the root, and it will give you some information what type of service it is. This isn't required. The two that are required is this location for well-known dot slash did.json. Now, did stands for decentralized ID. Each feed needs to have its own did, and so we're going to generate the did. Now, notice that there's an ID for the did and a service endpoint, both of which use this feed gen host name. We're not going to worry about the fact that we've got the wrong one in this environment variable right now, but we're going to have to change that before we post it or publish it. The other endpoint that is needed is this XRPC get feed skeleton. This gets called whenever a user wants to see what's in the feed, and the result coming back from that is just a simple array of posts, and each post is a URI in the @ format. And this is how ATProto and Bluesky keeps track of feeds. So for example, this is the decentralized ID for a specific user. This is a collection where they keep all of their posts, and this is a specific record of that post. So in this case, our feed generator is super simple. It returns 3 hard-coded posts, and that's it. And that's just responding to this get feed skeleton. That's it. And then we start up the server and we're ready to go. The other two pieces of code that we will see in action is this publish feed gen and unpublish feed gen. So I copied these from another sample TypeScript project, which is referenced in the README as well. But what this one does is, in order for a feed to be available, it needs to be associated with an account. And in order to do that, there needs to be a record of that feed that's listed in a collection for that user. So what this code does is it also makes use of this host name, but what it's going to do is ask a number of questions like what's your Bluesky handle, what's your Bluesky password. Those two things are needed to log in to the repo because the code needs to be able to create this record to say that a feed exists on this account. Go through the extra steps of setting up an app password that's recommended. You can find out how to do that. It's just set up a password, so I'm not using my actual password for this data connection to connect to the system. These other defaults, you can just accept them. My account's on Bluesky Social, so that's a good setting. This is what the short name or the record name is going to be for the feed. We're just going to call it min feed. It's going to display up as minimum feed. It's got a description. Uh, Optionally, you can set an avatar. But what's happening is that the main part here is that we're creating a record in the repo for the person that's logged in. We're going to their app Bluesky Feed Generator collection and we're creating a record. And that's going to be a record that describes the feed. On the flip side, there is a Unpublish, which asks you some of the same questions, connection information so you can log in, but it also is going to ask this confirmation. If you respond yes to that, then it's going to go through and delete the record at that same location. So that's all the code that's happening inside of this. So first thing we're going to do, even though uh, this environment variable is incorrect, let's just see that the service runs. Um, so if this is the first time you're doing it, make sure you've already done npm install to get all the packages downloaded and updated. But if we go ahead and run this command npm start, then it's going to start up this local server. While that's happening, I'm just going to jump over to this package.json file. Here's a number of different scripts that you can run. We're just doing the npm start here. Build actually is going to be used if you're deploying the service someplace else other than locally, and it's going to create a dist folder. And then there's this publish feed and unpublished feed. If you look at the dependencies that's needed for this, there's not that many. This ATProto API really right now is only being used in the publish and unpublished feeds to write or put that record or delete that record about the feed. This environment variable is used both by publish feed and this service itself to get this value out of .env, and express.js we've already looked at in this index. That's what the feed generator service uses to make expose those two endpoints that it needs. Okay, great. We see that this service is already up and running. We can go here to the README, and there's a couple of links here. So if we just click on this root here for the service, we can see that it serves this up. So the service is working just fine. We can go back here, and here is the endpoint to serve up that well-known did document. And I'm just using Vivaldi here as my browser, but you can see it's got the wrong feed name here, but it does serve up the document just fine. And the last one is that we want to make sure that we can get the feed skeleton. So if we take a look at that, sure enough, it returned those things. So great. We know that the service is running locally, and we can hit the endpoints. But in order for Bluesky to see it, this needs to be a public endpoint. So that's what we're going to use ngrok for. So we're going to keep this. Actually, let's go ahead and shut this down for just a minute. We're going to flip this over to a new terminal. This is going to be for ngrok. This ngrok command says generate some temporary publicly available endpoint that's available through HTTPS, and we're going to point it at this service that's running locally. This service doesn't technically have to be running. Like I said, we just shut that down, but it's still working okay for us. So notice that this endpoint that ends in .ngrok-free.app is the one that ngrok is giving to us. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to tuck that away to the side because the part that we need in here is actually this part right here. So just copying that portion out of here. And now we're updating this and making sure that we save it. All right, so this is where the feed is being hosted from, at least during this local session here. What's also interesting is that there is an inspector tool web interface that ngrok gives you. So as it's forwarding the request, I'll request from here to this local host. it's collecting logs of what the requests are. So this tool is going to be helpful for us. So let's go ahead and open that. So if you notice here, so this is the endpoint that we're requesting. That's the same thing that we had copied over into the host name for the environment variable. So what that means is that we can test if this is running. So we want to first make sure that this service is running. It's not. We have to start this up, but it's now going to pick up the correct endpoint. And while it's doing that, here are some examples of endpoints. We have to take out this XYZ and copy over the new generated temporary ID that has been created. But we can do that here. Just a second. Let's take this over here. It's going to fail, saying, hey, I don't recognize that. But if we take this ngrok generated host name and instead paste that there, and notice it's running on HTTPS as well, then so suddenly we see it here. If we go over to the inspector, we can see that that this was available. Now, if we were to go and add to that, so there is a what's it, well-known /did.json document. Oh, good. It did serve that up, and notice that now the did and the service endpoint are pointing to the correct location. We can also check to see, and sure enough, this did document was hit. And then the last one, I'm going to go ahead and copy that from here, was this skeleton, this feed skeleton one. Starts with XRPC. So we can go back to here and test that sure enough, this endpoint works publicly and serves up our feed of our 3 posts. So great. And inspector caught that one as well. So we're going to go ahead and clear these requests so we can see anything new that's happening. So what we've done is we've looked at the code. We understand just there's 2 endpoints that need to be served up on the feed generator service itself. We know that we're doing a hard-coded list of feed posts in our feed, and we have tested that it's running locally, and we've tested that you can access it through this ngrok generated host name. So the next thing that we need to do is we actually need to publish this. So for example, like I said before, when we come over here to my list of feeds, no feeds listed. There's no feeds associated with that. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and publish the feed. So we're going to go ahead and do publish feed, and it's going to ask us some questions. The first one being is, what is my handle? So that's marktucker.bluesky.social. That's my handle. I've pasted the password there. We're going to just accept the PDS that I'm signing in with. I'm Bluesky Social, so I'm just going to go ahead and accept that. The name or the record for the feed that we're calling it min feed, but this is minimum feed, and the description is what's going to show, and we're going to just use the default avatar, so we're not going to hit anything there. It says it's all done. Now if we go back here and refresh feeds, it shows that the feed's there. So it's got the display name and the description. If we go over here, those 2 endpoints haven't been hit yet. But if we go and click on minimum feed, we'll notice that 3 posts show up. So 1, 2, and 3. So those are the 3 hard-coded posts that we did. And if we go back over here to the ngrok inspector, we can see first it hit the well-known did endpoint and it served that up correctly. I just thought it was interesting. The user agent is Bluesky Vortex Ingester. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the next endpoint is the feed skeleton. We see that we're returning back the post. I think they call it skeleton because we're just passing the post IDs, and then the app itself hydrates these posts with all the details that go along with them. At least that's how I understood it. But one thing that we haven't done in our feed generator was do anything with some query parameters that we get passed. So the fact that we asked for this feed, made a call, and it passed asking for this feed specifically. Notice min feed is the end. That's what we called it. And something else that we is not in this code would be cursors. So like if you had a longer list of posts, you might want to do pagination. So that could be happen with a query string for a cursor parameter. So let's take a look at some additional links here. So we've gone through publishing. We haven't unpublished yet. Like here is this get feed skeleton document from Bluesky. So it talks about that the feed URI is required, but there's some limit and cursor or things that are possible. We're doing the very bare minimum. We're not even returning a cursor. We're just returning a feed object, which is required, which requires a post property. But if we were to look at, there's a few other things that you could respond back with, but we've responded with the most basic, simple response that we can. So we do have that. And let's see what else we have. If we go here, we've got 2 entries. If I were to go to like more feeds, and I could see my minimum feed there, yep. And I could go ahead and post it. So let's see if I refresh this. Does minimum feeds show off onto my right-hand side? It does. And let's see, we're still at, oh, I did make another call to get feed skeleton. And if we do minimum feed from here, notice it refreshed it. Did that make another call? Nope, it doesn't look like it did. All right. Maybe it had it cached or something. So, all right, just curious. If I go back here though, and does that do anything? Oh, it does SV skeleton limit 1. That's interesting. So there's some more research we'll have to do as far as understanding what these query parameters are used for and why it would limit 1 versus limit 30 in other cases. But our feed's up and going. We're in good shape. A couple other things I wanted to quickly look at while we're running here is this Bluesky developer guide. So this guide, and there's an associated video, and there's a link to that as well, talks about all the different, PDS for personal data server, talks about collections, records, kind of the whole overall architecture. So here's, some of the collections, and part I want to look at is this project idea section. So here's this feed generator. So what we created today was just the basic feed generator service. It responded to 2 endpoints, this did and getting the did document and getting the list of posts. It doesn't do anything with the fire hose and it doesn't have a database. But if you think about the 3 hard-coded posts that we have in here, they could be externalized into a database, and then the code could be used to read those values from the database. And you could have some other system where you curate, which specific posts you want to be in the feed. And all you'd have to do is update the database with those. And the next time somebody asks to get a list of feed, of posts for the feed, it could read it from the database. You could also have some process on the database where it deletes posts that are older than a certain time. So that's kind of like the next step that you could have. On this kind of this hard-coded scenario and this with just a database, this feed generator could be use serverless architecture. So it could be running on something where the only time that the code is running some sort of an edge function or AWS Lambda function or Google Cloud function. And anytime these are hit, then it makes a call to the database and gives a response. That's very much could be possible. If you wanted to go like a full-fledged service, you could either have some other service where the fire hose is pulling things off, listening specifically for posts and searching for specific hashtags or URLs to specific websites or from posts from specific people and could update the database. Now that fire hose kind of watcher or listener could be in its own service and just update the feed database, or it could be in the same feed generator service itself. And this could always be running, pulling things off of the fire hose as it needs to. It can save that information to the database, specifically the URI, but also when the post was created, could gather information. You can keep track of likes on the post, other things like that if you want to do most popular. So lots of different things that you can do for a feed generator. But today we covered just the most basic parts to it. Let's see if there's any other documents I wanted to bring out. So here's a video that goes along with the Bluesky developer guide. Oh, I did want to talk about ATProto. And we'll do that in just a second here. And then these are the two examples that I used for figuring out how this feed generator works and this document. So let's go back to our browser, and we're going to go to this ATProto browser. What this does is it lets me look at what is in my my repo for my private data. So I'm just going to take a look at that. Mark Tucker, bluesky.social. And if you notice, so like if you take a look at a post, here's the different posts. And here is that URI that they're grabbing. So it's my post that matches the did, that goes along with me. And here's a feed post, and here's a specific ID for the record. So I had a post, and those are what gets returned back from that get skeleton. But if we take a look at this feed generator, notice that the record is called min_feed. That was one of the things that was asked me when I was publishing it. But if I take a look at that, then here's the description. Here's the minimum feed, the description of that, and the did that goes along with the service itself. So this is all the information about a specific feed. So if we go back, so notice we've got feed generator with one. The last thing we haven't done yet would be to go to unpublish feed. So unpublish, once again, is going to ask me for my handle and a password so that it can go into that repo and delete that record we just took a look at. So right, and pasting the password in, we're accepting that min_feed, and we're making sure we say yes to that. Says that it's all done, so we can verify that by going to Bluesky and going to feeds, and I have no feeds there now. And if we go to our proto browser, here's that feed generator record, and if we refresh, it's gone as well. So in this video, we've taken a look at a bare minimum feed generator service. We've taken a look at the 45 lines of code that it took to create this. And we've talked about what happens with the publish and unpublish and exactly how we connect and are able to access a feed in Bluesky. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, just leave them below and we'll catch you next time. Enjoy programming for Blue Sky and App Protocol.